With less than 2 months to go until your exams, the time you have left to revise is tight. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the key topics you must revise in the lead up to your exams. Hi everyone, and welcome to Miss Estrick Biology. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my key findings that I've got after I've analysed every single AQA and OCR past paper. Yes, that's right. I have spent hours going through every past paper that's come up for the A-level of AQA and OCR, and I've gone through what percentage of each paper assesses each spec point for every paper. I've then summarised that for each year, and then I've summarised it as an overall. So basically, I've done the analysis, and I'm going to be sharing with you which topics commonly come up, which topics always come up, and the highest proportion of each paper, which spec point it is. So essentially, you can streamline your revision. So make sure you update any revision plans you have to take this into account. And if you do want access to these spreadsheets, for students, it's exclusively available only in the Biology Study Club, which is my monthly membership, which I've got linked below. If you are a teacher, just send me a DM on Instagram and I can talk to you directly as well about how you can access these spreadsheets to help your students. So let me take you through what I found. So welcome to my mega data analysis for all of the AQA past papers that have come up. So as you can see, for 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23, for all three papers on the spec, what I did was tally up how many marks there were for each spec point. That was then automatically generated as a percentage. I've then got the total number of times that topics ever come up, that as a percentage as well. And that is for total number of times on paper one, and then as an overall appearance. So from that, we can see which are the most commonly assessed topics. So for AQA for paper one, or year 12 topics, the highest proportion was for mass transport, but that could be mass transport in animals or plants. It was then also cell recognition. Now that was hugely swayed by 2023, where loads of it was actually immunity. And I think that was this one here. 18% of that paper was, and that's paper one, 18% of paper one was immunity, which was outrageously high. And then the other one is proteins. So for the year 12 topics, proteins, immunity, and mass transport are the highest proportion of questions in the historical papers. But you do also have quite a lot on carbohydrates. Proteins we already talked about. That's gas exchange as well. That's come up a lot. And genetics and diversity. So for those ones there, the 100% means they have come up every single year. So there's always been something on carbohydrates on either paper 1, 2, or 3, something on proteins, something on gas exchange, and something on genetic diversity, which could be meiosis or mutations. So those always come up, or have always come up, whereas those three that I talked about have come up in the highest proportions. Then if we have a look at paper 2, so for our highest proportions overall, I've not actually got this highlighted, but we can see here 64%, that's a high proportion. That is nutrient cycles. We also have a high proportion on this one here, which is gene expression and gene technologies. So those three topics from the spec have come up in the highest proportions. The highest frequency, we don't actually have any that have appeared on every single paper, but I have highlighted the most common ones. We've got nervous system or nervous coordination. We've also got homeostasis, inheritance, gene expression, and gene technology. So those are your big ones to be revising for your year 13 topics. I also did a bit on the practicals. The main thing that came out from this was that the sampling practical is probably the most assessed one, as well as aseptic technique and the mitosis root tip squash. But that could still be quite variable. It just means historically, those are the ones that have been assessed the most. So what can you do with this information then after we've gone through this AQA analysis? Well, you still need to revise everything and you should still prioritise what you find hardest. But how you can now use this information is, from the list of topics that commonly come up and are assessed in high proportions, make sure you have dedicated enough time to revise those, especially if it's a topic that you also find challenging. So it's a way to help you to prioritise which topics you revise and the types of exam questions you're doing. Now, it is worth noting that with this AQA analysis, it doesn't take into account the essay, because the essay can assess a whole range of topics and it depends which topics you choose to include. So there is still that to consider, that some of the proportions here would be swayed based on what essay you ended up writing as well. Next then, let me take you through the OCR past paper analysis. Now, for this one, I don't have access to the 2023 paper, so this one I'll have to update at a later point, but we do have 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21 and 22 analysis, and this is for paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, and we can compare it against all the different spec points. So if we have a look at paper 1 appearances, the first module is all about your practical skills. So I've included this, but really that's just to get a bit of an idea, but the analysis always comes up. Then if we focus more on the theory, transport in animals, transport in plants, that's come up on every paper 1. So that's the same as AQA. Mass transport is a big one that gets assessed. The next ones that always came up were photosynthesis and respiration. So those topics came up every year. So make sure you've absolutely thoroughly revised those topics. If we then go and have a look at paper 2, for paper 2, the topics that came up every single year were biological molecules, nucleotides and nucleic acids, as well as communicable disease and biodiversity, and also patterns of inheritance and cloning and biotechnologies. Now, partly you do have a lot of these topics assessed as a small percentage because it's in the multiple choice, but those have come up every year. And then if we have a look at the total number of times appeared on paper 3, there wasn't any that came up every single year, but communicable disease and biodiversity did come up a lot, as did patterns of inheritance. After that, the ones I've highlighted in the next bits were quite common. So cloning and biotechnology, got respiration, and then also biological molecules. But as I said, for some of them, they're not coming up in high proportions of each paper. It might have just been 1 or 2 marks. But overall in yellow, these are the key topics that frequently get assessed. So make sure you thoroughly understand those topics for OCR A. So with OCR, we can see that pretty much every topic gets assessed every year, and that is because of the multiple choice element, making sure that essentially everything, or a really, really broad range of topics from the spec, are assessed every year. So pay closer attention to which topics there is a higher proportion of questions on, and as you can see, I highlighted for you which topics do commonly come up to really focus your revision on. So there we have it. That is my full analysis for AQA and OCR. So make sure you take that into account with your final revision plans in these last couple of months. And as I said, if you do want access to those spreadsheets, plus loads of other exclusive lessons, resources, and access to me to ask me any questions that you need help with, then make sure you check out my biology study club in the link below, which is my monthly membership. But for now, that is it, and I will see you next week for more help to get you the grades that you deserve in your A-levels.